This presentation has been created by a volunteer water and land committee made up of county commissioners, city council representatives, planners, water companies, and ag producers from Uray, Montrose, and Delta County. Our goal is to educate and inform residents on the importance of water here in the Uncompahgre Valley. Educating the public about our complex water system is critical as new residents continue to migrate here. Everyone needs to be aware of the critical nature of water in the valley. Colorado is referred to as a headwaters state because so many of the major rivers of the United States originate high up in its mountain valleys. The South Platte, Arkansas, Rio Grande, and the Colorado River all begin their path to the sea in Colorado's Rocky Mountains. Accordingly, the health of Colorado rivers and streams impacts states and countries downstream. Arizona, California, Nevada, and Mexico all rely on an adequate supply of water from the Colorado River. If you've been here for any length of time, it's likely that you've noticed that we talk about water, lack of water, drought, snowpack a lot. This valley would not be what it is today if it weren't for the adequate snowpack and the water from the Gunnison River. When you first moved to Montrose in the spring, summer, and even early fall, this might be what attracted you to the area, but this wasn't always the case. In fact, this beautiful yard began as what we call dobies. The Uncompahgre Valley is a large subalpine desert. The lush valley that you see today, filled with corn, hay, beans, onions, and even lawns, exists only because of the efforts of the early pioneers who, because of water supply, had to get very inventive with solutions. It might surprise you that the Uncompahgre Valley receives less precipitation on average than the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. Most of our water comes from the snowpack in our surrounding mountains. In fact, 90% of the water in Colorado begins as snow above 9,000 feet. This photo of Montrose in the late 1800s demonstrates what the first settlers to our area saw. I'd like to draw your attention to the lack of vegetation: no lawns, no crops, no trees, and certainly no water fountains. The early farmers and producers believed that the river would contain enough water to irrigate the nearly 175,000 acres of farm ground, but water from the Uncompahgre River was unreliable. By 1890, fewer than 30,000 acres were being cultivated. These water shortages demanded action. Local ranchers and farmers knew the Gunnison River did have adequate flow, so they dreamed up the idea to dig a tunnel from the Gunnison River to the land they wanted to farm. They tried to run an elevation line from the Black Canyon to see if a tunnel was feasible. While this effort failed, their idea drew attention from the U.S. Geological Survey and Montrose Power and Light. The next year, brave volunteers floated the river in air mattresses to explore whether a tunnel would work. The rest, they say, is history. See, the vision was to divert the water from the Gunnison River through a tunnel and distribute the water through a complex system of irrigation canals and laterals. These canals and laterals supply the water to farms and ranches. Montrose and Olathe began to flourish as an agricultural region, and in 1909, President William Howard Taft dedicated the tunnel. And all that work means we get to live in a beautiful valley today. So now we have the water from the Gunnison Tunnel. We have two uses of water in this valley: domestic, or sometimes called municipal water, and irrigation water, sometimes called raw water because it hasn't been treated. It's likely that the water coming to your home or business is delivered to you through one of these domestic water suppliers. All the treated water in our valley comes through Project 7 Water Authority, which is the treatment plant, and then it's delivered to these suppliers. The Uncompahgre Valley Water Users Association is the primary source of delivery of irrigation water to the producers in the valley. They control headgates and distribute the water through the canals, laterals, and ditches that wind throughout the valley. There are also private ditches that predate the Uncompahgre Valley Water Users Association. It's important that residents understand that all these ditches have easements so the ditch owner can maintain and operate the ditches properly. Property owners must honor these easements by not making the ditch use more difficult or restricting access to the ditch. This is what gets people in trouble. Ditch owners do indeed have the right to cross your property to maintain their ditch. Because water is scarce, the state of Colorado devised a strategy for allocating water when there's not enough to go around. The state's water courts and river basin engineers are responsible for administering the water throughout the state. In Colorado, to use water, you must have a decree from state's water court. This court assigns a priority to your decreed water right. Most decrees are actually held by the water companies. Something you may not know, Most of the irrigated land in the lower valley has water delivered by the Uncompahgre Valley Water Users Association and is tied to the land and cannot be severed or sold off the land. So why do we keep talking about water? Well, going forward, the water supply of this valley faces several threats and challenges. Populations continue to grow. Future demands for water on the Front Range of Colorado and the lower basin states exceed projected supplies. The climate is changing, making droughts and fire more severe and frequent in the valley, and speculators who dabble in water as a commodity put us at risk by buying up water rights which could dry up the farmlands. So why do we want you to know about water? And why is it such a big deal? Today, the valley has adequate water supplies for its residents and will remain a beautiful and viable landscape for the foreseeable future. However, it will only stay that way if we carefully shepherd it, conserve it, and diligently guard it. We all are responsible for safeguarding this precious and vital resource. Get involved. Know how the water is managed on your property within your HOA. Don't waste any water. Be guardians of the water. The Water and Land Committee wants every resident in Uray, Montrose, and Delta counties to understand where the water comes from, where it goes, how it's protected by law, and why we talk about water all the time. If you're interested in learning more and would like additional information, please go to westslopeWaterInfo.com.